Kingdom Hearts 3 has sold really well. It's performed great in sales, and a lot of people are loving it. Unfortunately, not everybody is loving it, and you can't really appeal to everybody. However, I do feel that some of these reasons as to why it's not appealing to a large chunk of people are things that can be patched, changed, and worked on to create a better future for the game. In this video, I'm going to talk about why Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind might actually be able to save Kingdom Hearts 3 as a title. Now, before we can actually understand why these things might save Kingdom Hearts 3, we have to properly address what's wrong with Kingdom Hearts 3 to begin with. Certain mechanics in the game just really don't work, and the one notable one that a lot of us talk about is guard. Guard just doesn't seem to work consistently. There's a lot of fights where you'll bust out a guard, and you'll get hit anyway. It's easy to see, well, you know, the attack came from behind you. But unfortunately, there are a lot of situations where you'll hear the sound that indicates that you successfully guarded something. You don't take the initial damage hit, but it is a constantly hitting move, and by the time that enemy pushes past you, it will then damage you because it's registering as coming from behind. Now, this makes it seem very inconsistent, and it makes it feel like guard is almost worthless. Being a central part of defensive maneuvers in this game, an ability like that can't work inconsistently and still be valuable to the game as a whole. This is something that really needs to be worked on, and this is definitely something that has to change if this game is going to be loved and adored for years to come, and the DLC is going to be replayed a bunch, and the game's going to have a big lifespan to it. The next thing that a lot of people talk about is the stagger mechanics. If you've ever fought a large boss, and you wondered why sometimes the boss would get staggered, but sometimes they wouldn't, and it didn't really seem consistent, some people wanted to come out here and say, well, if you use specific finisher moves, it'll automatically stagger the boss, and this just isn't quite true. I believe it was in an Ultimania where Nomura came forward and explained that there was a stagger system in place where after you reach a certain value, a boss will then become staggered. Now, this is kind of like the revenge value system, but tailored towards staggering rather than retaliation. Unfortunately, stagger mechanics is a little inconsistent because some people claim it's on finishers, some people claim it's on specific moves in general, but unfortunately, this makes playing the game very problematic because there's no real clear and consistent way for the average player to understand how to stop a giant boss from just breaking out of whatever move you have. If we can get the stagger system tuned to be more consistent, for instance, every second finisher you deal to an enemy will automatically stagger them and then give you free combos. This can make the gameplay loop feel a lot more rewarding, and it makes it feel like you can actually go into things with a plan and not worrying about being immediately broken out of your combo. In addition to this, there's a lot of gameplay problems that just need to be balanced out. Magic is a huge issue in this. Magic costs either too little and deals too much damage, or you don't have enough of a mana bar to the point that the damage that you'd get out from using a link instead of magic is infinitely more valuable to the point that it is a no-brainer and that you will always use one mechanic over the other. I've heard the argument said that just don't use a mechanic if you think it's broken, and this has a lot of flawed logic behind it. The game developers are supposed to give you tools that are interesting that you can choose between because all of them are viable and you get to play the game how you want to play it. The idea that I shouldn't use links because they deal too much damage and I want a more fair gameplay system, that shouldn't be something that I have to instill for myself. Balance should be a natural part of the game, implemented and designed into the game from the get-go. I personally feel that to say that, well, just don't use links is a very big apologist view for poor game balance. This just isn't an argument that I feel is fair to the player who's trying to play the game the best they can, but is forced to play it a very specific way because that's what the game requires of them because it's just the most efficient way to do something. Now, lastly, for the problems is something that we kind of all know about, and it's something that we really, really wanted from the get-go, and that's endgame content. There is a very simple grind to get the Ultima weapon, and it's a grind. You have to go and you have to do so many different things just to get all the crafting materials to buy this one thing, And that's the usual. That's with every Kingdom Hearts game that we've ever had. And the benefits that it brings you are pretty cool in most of the Kingdom Hearts game, but they're exceptionally cool in Kingdom Hearts 3 because it actually brings a whole new form change, and that changes how you approach fights. However, working towards this grind means nothing if you actually don't have that much content to even use it on and flex it out. Now, I understand that some might argue that the implementation of New Game Plus is something that's the answer to this, but this just isn't quite enough. Having Ultima Weapon makes it so that blowing through the game is a breeze, even at the hardest difficulty. Just using Ultima Weapon just turns you into an absolute monster, and you can clear any content you want. This doesn't make earning the weapon an actual achievement that you can use to test your abilities and flex out how well you can use it. Compare this to something like Final Form, where once you've unlocked it, you then get to take it to the Data Org fights. You then get to use it and test it on all these fights and learn new strategies with it. Unfortunately, in Kingdom Hearts 3, this just doesn't exist. There's a small handful of mob fights that are more or less the same because the magic system is broken. It just kind of all devolves into this mush of spam thunder, spam spell, spam grand magic, and it's done. Use a shot lock and you'll definitely be done from there. There's no real way to flex the Ultima Weapon and the ultimate form. Now that we've understood some of the core problems of Kingdom Hearts 3, I'm going to address what I think Remind could bring to the game that can bring a positive change for the better. Now, whether or not you actually purchase Remind, I'm hoping that they're going to give us a big patch with a lot of changes and tweaks. I'm hoping that they fix guard. I'm hoping that they actually make form changing more consistent and earning situation commands more consistent. Currently, there's an issue where it's not quite clear how you earn the arrows, and it requires 3 arrows to actually earn a situation command, which can include a form change. Thankfully for critical mode, they did add a form change ability that allows you to always get a form change when you get all 3 arrows. I don't think this should be a critical exclusive thing. This needs to be in the base game. They've designed this game around form changing so intensely that to make it an inconsistent transformation or an inconsistent earn, it doesn't make any sense to me. This needs to be something that is in the base game, so that way people can constantly experience form changes, bank up their form changes, swap between them mid-fight, learn to flex them out. It totally changes the way that you play the game once you know that you get form changes consistently every time you generate a situation command. The same is to be said for situation commands in general. We should be building up situation commands in a consistent manner where we can actually understand how many hits it's going to take, how many finishers it's going to take, and what kind of abilities we can use to earn what situation commands. This needs to be something that will slowly turn into second nature for a player as they play through the game, and as they get farther along, it becomes more of a system that they've mastered and that they can now use this mastery to command the battlefield and earn your victory because you have learned how to make the most efficient use of the combat system. Ideally, I'd really like staggering to be more consistent. I wish that, like I said before, we could have maybe after every 2 finishers, it's an automatic stagger, or whenever you use grand magic, it's an automatic stagger. I think making staggering more consistent could lead to a much more understandable gameplay loop from a beginner to an RPG veteran. I would really like to see some tweaks to magic done. I would like to see magic be more efficient at higher difficulties, rather than having links be the dominating damage dealing. I'd like to be able to swap between all of these depending on if the situation calls for it, rather than just feeling like I'm wasting my time if I just don't use Simba, or if I just don't use Ariel, or if I just don't use Wreck-It Ralph. I think that making magic more balanced with links and that more balanced with Keyblade attacks can make for an interesting gameplay loop where we actually swap between all of these different things without feeling like we're inferior to the most optimal way to play the game. I'd like to feel like I'm using all the tools at my disposal and I'm still performing at a high level. I think this would increase the fun factor dramatically and would actually let people exercise all of the different things that the game has to offer. Tweaking damage scaling in general, like I was talking about with Keyblade combos, and the difficulty scaling in general, I think could just throw this game over the edge. If we could have it so we're not dealing chip peanut damage in critical mode, and we're actually able to deal solid chunks of damage, would make the risk of playing critical actually mean something. Critical should be a mode in which it's extremely difficult to combat these characters, not by an artificially inflated difficulty of them just having much larger health bars and us dealing peanut damage, but I'd rather it be it's very risky. It's extremely, extremely risky to play this game mode. You must be able to block these abilities. You must learn how to use the different tools in your arsenal to be able to approach the battle in a way where you can overtake it and actually win. I want this to be a mode in which your mastery over the entire combat system is rewarded, and taking these risks is hard, but it's rewarding because you can put out that damage and you can command that battlefield because you have mastered the combat system. Of course, coming in Remind, we do know for a fact that we are getting a couple new Keyblade forms, and I think this is going to be awesome because it's going to give us more of an opportunity for building different Keyblade setups for different situations. It'd be great if we had bosses to use these different Keyblade setups on, and we actually do know that in addition to a main scenario for the DLC, we do know that we are getting a chunk of super bosses comparable to the number of super bosses that were in Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix. I think that if we lay out all of these problems and we get a lot of these problems addressed and tweaked and fixed, we don't even really need all of them, but if we did have all of them, this would make Kingdom Hearts 3 such a solid game. It would definitely be a game that I would not feel bad picking up again. I did really enjoy playing Kingdom Hearts 3, but it was such a treat to pick back up Kingdom Hearts 2 and show that my mastery of the game on the highest difficulty was heavily rewarded. But when you do the same thing on Kingdom Hearts 3, it doesn't quite function that way. Your mastery of the game is just rewarded with very, very slow progression. And I just don't think that this is a good expression of what difficulty in a game is. I don't think Kingdom Hearts 3 is a bad game by any means, and honestly, I'd really like to do a very in-depth review of it sometime soon. But I just don't quite think it is what it should be, and I'm hoping that Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind saves it. What do you think about the current status of Kingdom Hearts 3? Are you happy with where the game is at, or do you really want a certain chunk of things solved? If you have any thoughts about what you want changed for Kingdom Hearts 3, tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to read all of your ideas, and I'd love to get a conversation going so we can more openly talk about what we want from Kingdom Hearts and what you want from Kingdom Hearts. If you want to see more of my Kingdom Hearts videos, feel free to go to my channel. There's a nice chunk of them there. And if you want to see more Kingdom Hearts videos going into the future, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon to get notifications whenever a new video comes out. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.